Hi candle makers, welcome to our online candle making session. We're going to be discussing wick sizing today and how to choose the right wick to make sure that your candle burns the way it should. What we want is a wick that produces a wax pool within 3 to 4 hours from side to side. So we want the whole candle to melt because the fragrance comes from the wax pool, it's not the wick. So we need to make sure that our wick is the right size for the jar we're using, the fragrance we're adding to the wax, and which wax we're actually selecting. So the basics are this. What we need to know is the internal diameter of our jar. How big is this opening? Now this is quite straightforward because it's an up and down jar. There's no curves, there's no wide bottom or wide top. There's no curve in the middle. So what we want to do is measure the internal diameter, and this is just under 70 millimeters. So if I was using the LCS wicks, we would select an LCS 65. An LCS 65 will do 65 to 70 millimeters. But I'm using S100 wax, which is a pure soy, and I know that needs a slightly higher wick size. So for this jar, I'm going to use an LCS 70. That comes from experience and knowing your wax. So there's our jar. If you can put them through the dishwasher, make sure they're spotlessly clean, that's great. Remember, a lot of jars have colours that aren't dishwasher safe, so don't assume you can put them all in the dishwasher. But what I normally do is give them a spray with alcohol just to make sure that they're spotlessly clean so my wick will stick well. We want no dust in this candle jar, so that way it's nice and clean. So there's our nice clean jar. When you're first starting off, it's worth actually making some templates so you can actually position your wick in the middle of the jar. This is just basically the same size as the jar. You can see, and I've put a cross in the middle, so that's what we're going to aim for when we put our wick in the jar. This is something you do when you're first learning. After a while, you won't need to do this. You'll automatically stick it into the middle of the jar. But there's our nice clean jar. The wicks we're using are cotton wicks. They've been primed, so they stay upright. They've got the metal sustainer on the bottom. What we're going to use to secure these wicks is our wick stickers, which come as rolls. They're double-sided stickers, or stickums as they're called. They're slightly padded so it keeps the heat of the wick off the glass, and they're very strong, and I'll show you that in a minute. So we're going to pop that onto the end of the wick, press it down so it actually sticks well. We're going to peel off the other end, and then we're going to position it in our jar. And then we're going to make sure we press it down so it stays tight. This is how strong they should be. It's actually holding the weight of the jar. Now, one of the regulations in Australia is to make sure that these jars have the safety sticker on them. So there's our safety stickers. Now, if you get into the habit of putting these on the bottom of your jar, when you put your wick in, it becomes a habit and you know it's done. So there's our wick safety sticker on the bottom. That's a generic one, but you can get your own printed. So there's our wick in our jar. We now need to secure the wick so it doesn't move around. We want to make sure that it stays centered. And I'm just going to take this isopol stick off this jar. And this has a little hole in it. We're going to pop it over the top of the wick. Now remember, the wick length is standard. It's the thickness of the wick that changes, and this is what determines how far around it will burn. So remember, we need a full diameter burn within 3 to 4 hours. If your wick doesn't reach the sides of your container, then you know your wick is too small. If it hits the side of the container much sooner than 3 hours, you know your wick is too big and your candle will burn much faster. You'll get a much bigger flame and you're more likely to get blooming at the top of your wick because it's burning too fast. So there's our jar. We want to keep our wick nice and straight, no sags in it, and centered in our jar. Now I've used a simple method of the clip, the peg on the isopol stick, but you can get this variety, which is the metal bars, and you can also get the plastic ones, which are adjustable, so you adjust them to the size of the jar you're using. So they're the different options. Once they're secure, they're pretty right. They shouldn't move around too much, but do make sure they do stick well. People do use super glue, they use craft glue, they use blue tack, so they're different options. I prefer to use the stickers because they're easy to get off. So once you wash your jar, the wax is biodegradable, so you can wash your jar out easily. The wick stickers can be removed by just soaking them in hot soapy water, and they'll peel off your jar quite easily. Don't jab at them with a knife to try and scrape them off. So that's our jar preparation for a cotton wick. Remember, these are primed. They've got a coating of wax on them. If you're using wood wicks, and we'll discuss wood wicks in more detail, this one actually has a curve. This is an S wick or wave wick. These actually sit into a clip and they're still secured. And I'll show you the wood wick and the clip. So this is a single layer wood wick. This is the clip that it actually sits into. So basically these just push into the clip. Oops, there you go. There's our clip, and then you'll adhere your sticker onto that one and pop that down into your jar. Now remember, these are unprimed. There's no coating of wax on these wicks. So when you actually fill your jar, you would pour over your wick as well. And that's what the wick is going to be using as a fuel when you first light it. If you think about it, if it doesn't have the wax coating on it, it's like lighting a match. You light it and it'll eventually go out. But priming your wick by pouring your wax over the top of them means it has the fuel to burn. So once you light it, it will stay lit. And I learned this the hard way when I first started, because I couldn't figure out why my wicks were going out so quickly. But prime your wicks, pour over your wick when you actually fill your jar. You'll get a nice burning wood wick. That's very important. The other difference between the cotton wicks and the wood wicks is they do discolour your wax, and this is one that's been burning. You can see the wax down the bottom where it hasn't actually melted yet, but this is a wood wick colour. So the wood wick will discolour your wax. You won't get that lovely white wax that you see in this jar. You can see the difference in colour. So that's something you have to decide if you're deciding to do wood wicks. In the end, it's all about what your customers want. If you're making them as a business, just tell people, explain how the candle works, and the most importantly, tell people to trim their wicks. This is for the preparation stage. Once your candle is actually set, then you'll be trimming your wick. So here's one that's already set. We're going to trim our wicks because, as I said, these are a standard length. You don't want your wick long. We're going to trim it to about 1/2 centimetre. And you need to do that for every time you burn your candle. And it's important to let other people know as well. You need to trim your wicks to 1/2 centimetre after each burn, so you don't get that bloom at the top that's causing the candle to burn too quickly or producing smoke and soot. A well-made candle should never produce smoke and soot, and I'll show you an example. This is a candle that's burnt all the way down. You can see there's no soot or no smoke in this candle. That's how they should look like when your candle is well made. So we've got a few more sessions to do to actually teach you the correct way to make candles. So in the end, you'll produce some lovely candles that look good, they smell good, and they're beautifully burning. Thanks.